TEKS 9C, writing exponential equations from a graph. So you should have already completed the ed puzzle titled Writing an Exponential Equation from a Table. If you have not completed that ed puzzle, please go back and do that first. If not, you're going to be really confused on this one because I use a lot of the things that I taught you guys on the last video. Okay. So let's start off by writing what an exponential equation looks like. So you guys have seen this multiple times. So remember, it is y equals a b to the x power, where a is the y-intercept or the starting value, and b is the growth rate. The growth rate or the decay rate. Okay. And that's okay. So what we're going to do first with all of these graphs is that we are going to first determine if it is a decay or if it is a growth. And remember, when we're looking at graphs, we know it's a decay if it's going down, and it's a growth if it's going up. So decay if it's going down, growth if it's going up. And remember, we read it from left to right. So on number 1, from left to right, we notice that this is going down, so this is a decay. And since it's a decay, we know our b value has to be less than 1. So let's keep that in mind. Our next step is to find the y-intercept. So the y-intercept on this graph is where this red function is crossing the y-axis, and that's right here at 3, so 0, 3. And I'm going to create a table so I can have these points in there. So x, y, and I'm going to always put our y-intercept in the middle, just in case that if it's a decay, we need to put our point on the top, and if it's a growth, then our point will go under it. That's just so our x values stay in order. We want it in numerical order. And you'll see that in just a minute. So another point I can use is right here, and this is -1, 6. So -1, 6. Do you see how it's in order on the x's? It goes -1, 0, and the next one would be 1. Has to be in order. Okay, but we don't need to write any more points here. We can already just figure out what is the change in y. So what is happening between 6 to 3? Remember, we can only multiply here. So if we need to divide, that means we're multiplying by a fraction. So 6 divided by 2 will give me 3. And that's the same as multiplying by 1/2. So now that we have our b value, which makes sense because we know b is less than 1 and 1/2 is less than 1, we can now write our problem. So I have y is equal to a, which is 3, so that's our y-intercept, parentheses 1/2 to the power of x. That's our answer. Okay, let's look at number 2. Number 2, remember our first step is to see if it is a growth or a decay. And again, it looks like this graph is going down, so this is going to be a decay. And since it's a decay, b has to be less than 1. So let me go ahead and create my table over here, and then we're going to find our y-intercept. So our y-intercept is right here at 0, 4. Remember, I'm going to put that right in the middle. And since it's a decay, we can put our point on the top, so it's in numerical order. So our next point looks like it's going to be -1, 8. So -1, 8. Remember, when we're finding these perfect points, they're on the corner of those squares. So on the corner. So just like -1, 8 was on the corner, that's a perfect point. But for example, we couldn't use this point right here because it's not on the corner. So make sure your perfect points are on the corner. Okay, so now let's look at our change in y, or our rate. So from 8 to 4, it looks like it's being divided by 2 again. And we know that dividing by 2 is the same as multiplying by 1/2. So we can now write our answer. We have y is equal to 4, because that's the y-intercept, parentheses 1/2 to the power of x. That's our answer. Okay, I'm going to do 2 more with you, and then you guys are going to work on the last 3. Okay, so let's look at number 3. Remember, our first step is to determine if it's a growth or a decay. We know that if we read this from left to right, our red line is going up, so it's a growth. And since it's a growth, b has to be greater than 1. So let's create our table. Remember, our next step is to find our y-intercept. And our y-intercept is right here at 0, 3. Let's put it in the middle. Okay. And then our next point looks like it's going to be 1, 6. 1, 6. So notice there's not going to be anything, I don't have to put anything in this upper box. Now it's in the bottom one since it's a growth. Okay, so now we can compare our change in y. So from 3 to 6, it looks like we're multiplying by 2. So that means our growth is 2, which makes sense because 2 is greater than 1, and that's what it has to be. So if we were to write our answer, y is equal to 3, because that's our y-intercept, parentheses 2 to the power of x. That's our answer. Okay, let's look at number 4. Remember, our first step is to determine if it's a growth or a decay. So looking from left to right, we notice that this red line is going up, so it's a growth. And since it's a growth, we know b has to be greater than 1. Okay, let's create a table. Our next step is to find the y-intercept, and our y-intercept is right here at 0, 5. So put it in the middle. Okay, then we can find another point. So let's see, looks like 1, 10. 1, 10 is a good point. Okay, now let's find the change in y. So from 5 to 10, it looks like it's being multiplied by 2. So this is a growth rate of 2. So our answer is y equal to 5, because that's our y-intercept, parentheses 2 to the power of x. Okay. Now you guys are going to work on number 5, 6, and 7 on your own. So go ahead and start with number 5. Okay, so what you should have got for number 5, or at least remember these steps, is to first determine if it was a growth or a decay. So you guys should have mentioned that it was a growth where b is greater than 1. And then you should have came over here, created your table, found your y-intercept, which is 0, 2. And then found another point, which you could have used right here, 1, 6. So 1, 6. Okay. And then after you found those 2 points, you notice that this was a growth rate of 3 because 2 times 3 gives you 6. So this is y is equal to 2, parentheses 3 to the power of x. Okay, go ahead and work on number 6. Okay, this is what you should have got for number 6. Remember, your first step is to determine if it's a growth or a decay. Well, you should have mentioned that it was a decay, so b has to be less than 1. Then you create your table, and then find your y-intercept. So right here, your y-intercept is 0, 2. And then another point you could find right here is at -1, 4. Remember, we're trying to find the ones that are closest to our y-intercept. Notice I'm not going all the way to the top and telling you another point, for example, -3, 18. I'm trying to find the point closest to the y-intercept. So then I have -1, oops, has to go on top because it's the decay, -1, 4. Okay. And then you should have saw that your growth right here is 1/2 because 4 divided by 2 gives you 2. And the same thing as dividing by 2 is multiplying by 1/2. So your answer should have been y is equal to 2 1/2 to the power of x. You know this is correct because your b, which is 1/2, is less than 1, and then you found your y-intercept and you put it in front. Okay, last one, go ahead and work on number 7. Okay, so this is what you should have got for number 7. You should have mentioned that number 7 is a growth because from left to right it's going up. And then we know that growth is where b is greater than 1. Then when you created your table, you should have found the y-intercept of 0, 3. Okay, put it in the middle. And then our next point looks like right here, 1, 6. 1, 6. And then to find your change in y, your growth rate, you notice that 3 times 2 gives you 6. And 2 is greater than 1, so that's correct. So we have y is equal to 3, parentheses 2 to the power of x. That is your answer. Okay, remember if you have any questions, please feel free to email me and I'll help you out.